Hey everyone. So apparently nowadays, even sharing news articles that's a little bit dated is considered disinformation and something to be frowned upon, according to those who want to be your thought leaders or opinion makers. That's the thing with these authoritarian collectivists and your thought leaders. They want you to be completely inundated and fall in line with whatever rhetoric or narrative they're trying to put forth today. They don't want you thinking back or looking back at anything they said in the past. No, 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 because they might change their outlook or opinion to reflect the current political paradigm and show how contradictory in nature some of their rhetoric truly is. And they don't want the Canadian people going around learning that kind of stuff. No, no, no. Listen, you just sit down, shut up, and pay attention to what your thought leaders are saying today. Not what they said yesterday or last month or last year, especially if the old narrative doesn't align with the new. Headline out of CBC News, Technology and Science. The latest disinformation threat online? Old news stories. Most resurrected stories are benign, but some can be divisive, falsely stoking debate. It's been reported by Kaylee Rogers, June 13th, 2019. Legitimate news stories are playing a role in the spread of disinformation online. The problem isn't the source, but the date. The stories were published years ago and are being shared as if they're new. An analysis of traffic to the CBC News site shows that old stories are frequently recirculated online and often shared without noting the age. Now, let me just say first and foremost, I share some of these kinds of articles, ones that have been put forth and presented in the past. I always do, though, make sure that I point out that it's a repost or that it's a dated article. But even if I didn't, it wouldn't deny the validity or the information contained in the article, now would it? And a lot of times, people like myself or others bring these things to light and dig up these old articles as a means to push back against the current narrative or information being shared by these hacks in the establishment media. A lot of times it's meant to push back against their own rhetoric or show that, hey, remember when you said that, right? In reality, sharing them is just usually meant to help educate and inform people on a particular area, topic, or subject and show that cause and effect correlation or what's been said in the past in comparison or contrast to what's being said in the present. I know for myself, but in this article, they're trying to allude or suggest that people that do these kind of things are just trying to disinform the public, which couldn't be further from the truth. Many resurrected stories are benign, like this one about a knife-stealing cow that recently saw a spike of traffic, but some cover divisive or political topics. Without the context of when the story was published, online posts that share these stories can be misleading and may stoke discord ahead of Canada's federal elections in October. Like I say, this is all in relation to the federal election. The federal liberals and their media mouthpieces in the CBC, they're so desperate at this point that they'll just basically use any excuse or any politically driven story to suggest that if people aren't sharing what we want to put out there and present to the people, if people are sharing anything other than that, consider it disinformation, fake news, propaganda, politically divisive rhetoric. I mean, you've heard all the negative connotations that those who represent the established media or the established political parties are now using to try to silence or suppress those who are challenging the status quo. And look at the lengths they're willing to go to manipulate the minds of the masses. This is different from fake news, but still misleading, said Jonathan Anzalone, the assistant director for the Center for New Literacy at Stony Brook University in New York. Taking something that's true and taking it out of context can change its meaning and can cause people to be misinformed. Take this story about an RCMP study that identified hundreds of cases of police corruption. It was published in 2014, but toward the end of May this year, the story began circulating on social media. It was shared on multiple popular Facebook groups, generating thousands of interactions, according to the social media monitoring site CrowdTangle. So once again, nothing that's contained within the article are lies, but what they're saying is you don't want to share that stuff today. But what about, some of the new information or news media reports coming out in regards to the RCMP? Wouldn't you want to share a story of something that happened that had to do with the RCMP in the past that showed more levels of corruption? That's called corroborating evidence or something to back up the original claim. None of the posts indicated the story was more than 5 years old, and many comments below the post drew an association between the police corruption findings and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. That's despite the fact that the investigation took place during Stephen Harper's administration and covered cases from 1995 through 2005. That's a surprise. Now follow it right to Trudeau and his band of thieves, one commenter wrote below a post sharing the story on May 20th. One of the earliest posts sharing the RCMP study this year was on the Facebook page for the Canadian Combat Coalition, a group that has drawn criticism for its ties to the far right and white supremacists, right? You notice the pattern with all these stories, right? The CBC saying, oh, the kind of people that are doing it are all those white supremacists or right-wingers. Like I say, it's always done with political spin and a particular narrative to try to convince you not to pay attention, listen to, or read anything that someone's putting out there presenting in the media landscape or anything that pertains to news. Like I say, your thought leaders and opinion makers, they're like, no, we're the only game in town. And they don't like competition. Because competition means you might think outside what they deem as allowable opinion. Not my job. Dan Dubois, the president of the coalition and administrator of the Facebook page, said he shared the story after seeing it circulating in private message groups. He said he didn't think it was misleading to share an old story because it's still relevant. It's an old article, but it's an ongoing problem, Dubois said. When I share an article, I hope that people read it. It's not my job to explain the article. Exactly. And I noticed that the caption that they're using in this article is from the United Conservative Movement of Canada. And that's a page that I follow as well. But based on the comments, it's clear many users either didn't read the story or didn't check the date it was published. In just the past 2 weeks, at least 7 CBC news stories on divisive or highly politicized subjects were recirculated online as if they were new. Sometimes the publishing date was pointed out by a commenter, but often those comments were ignored. So even when, like I say, whether it's the original poster or even a commenter points out that, hey, the article is older, is not brand new, some people aren't listening. Well, don't you think that happens even for people that put forth information? Like I say, think about the established media and their headlines. How many people just read the headline and just go with that as the basis for their informed opinion? Which, as I've shown many times in my videos in the past, the headline doesn't always match up or align with the body of the article. A lot of times it's quite contradictory and offers opposing statistics, facts, or numbers than what the headline would suggest. So once again, listen, the onus is, the one thing I will agree with, yes, the onus is on everybody to make sure they're paying attention, not just to what the date is on the release of the article, but what is actually contained within the body of the article. I definitely want people to be properly and well informed, but I'm not going to agree with this kind of nonsense that just suggests that just because someone shares an older article, that they're trying to, what? Trick people or manipulate them somehow? I mean, yeah, sure, some people might do that. But that should never be used as a blanket or generalized statement for someone that's actually sharing a real news article, whether it's current, up to date, or something that was released in the past. At the end of the day, it's what's contained within the body of that article that matters most. Anyways, I'll share a link to this article in the description of the video below. But like I say, folks, you got to be careful out there because those in the established media, these hacks are desperate and looking to use basically any excuse or reason that they can conjure up to convince you that, no, you don't want to pay attention to anyone other than themselves, and make sure it's only in reference to listen to what they're saying today, not what they said yesterday or in the past, because your thought leaders have probably had to reinvent a whole new narrative, and they don't want you to remember the narrative that they offered in the past, especially if it doesn't align with their new narrative that they're trying to jam in your head today. It's Canadian Libertarian, and I love liberty.